definitely just Wes and me. I kind of wish we were sitting together. Just like, are you guys familiar with the book Freak the Mighty?
Literal high and low.
It's a twins situation.
Yeah.
We were
Danny
in.
DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think Antony might not have gotten that reference.
We
I
were-
did not.
That was hilarious.
I'm,
We were in this
I'm
interview
the
with Tom
Schwarzenegger.
Fields, and Antony was like, "Oh man," Tom had said something about his son being 6'4", and Antony was like, "Man, 6'4" must be nice." And I was like, "Yep."
Yeah, it is nice. Sure is. That's hilarious.
Except you hit your head on things.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. So let's start with some intros. Wes, do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Wes Vincent. I'm the lead flight sciences engineer here at Hermeus. Been here for almost 2.5 years now, which is
Wild.
pretty crazy. Yeah, to think that we've gone 2.5 years and grown so much as we have in that time. So as lead flight sciences engineer, I own the vehicle configuration, OML, and a lot of everything that kind of rolls up into the performance, like aerodynamics, mass properties, stability and control, things like that. And so it's a lot of the vehicle analysis tasks. And before I was here at Hermeus, I was at SpaceX for about 5 years and briefly at Boeing before that. And I met one of the founders, Mike, at SpaceX. We worked together on the same team. So that's kind of how I ended up coming to Hermeus.
Awesome. Danielle?
Yeah. Danielle Mitrak. I'm the lead structures engineer. I've been with Hermeus for a little over a year. Somehow we're more than 4 times the size we were when I started. So we've definitely grown a lot, but grown a lot in the last year especially. So lead structures engineer, we own, the structures team owns all of the vehicle primary and secondary structure. So the things you see from the outside. And before here, I was at Astra, which is a small launch company out of the Bay Area. Did some stage ownership qualification work there. And then primarily structural analysis while I was at Blue Origin before that.
Mm-hmm. Antony?
Yeah. So Antony, lead avionics engineer here at Hermeus. So I focus on all the ones and zeros, the bits and the bops. Basically all the stuff that everyone gets the most excited for about planes, the computers and the wires. But no, it's a blast. I absolutely love doing it. We have a really killer team here at Hermeus, on the software side of things, the guidance, navigation, control, the electrical hardware, and then also now the RF architecture side of things as well. So kind of focusing a lot on all of those things for quarter horse where we're at right now, but also thinking long term, how do we want to set up the chess pieces right now to be a successful company as we start going to some future products as well. Kind of my story getting to Hermeus is pretty cool. I was an intern working with the founders back at a different company almost 4.5 years ago at this point, which is nuts. And yeah, when they reached out to move back to Atlanta and join this project that they started way back ago, it was just a no-brainer to just start owning a lot and just diving right into it. And it's been a blast of the past year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a good time.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember when me and Wes got to interview you. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And they called you the wrong name
Yep.
The entire
for
time.
the entire time.
Just not the wrong name, just a shortened version.
Anyone listening right now cannot know that I usually don't turn red. I didn't even know that was physically possible. But this is the thing that I get the most embarrassed about is that I called you
Nat.
I called you Nat.
Nat, you want to introduce yourself?
Because I thought that someone had said that, and the same way
They
that
didn't.
Wes goes by Wes, I'm like Nat goes by Nat,
No.
and you don't,
I
and you
don't.
don't at all. And I remember in the middle of my call with you two, Wes had called you Natalie, and
And you knew.
my entire reality was just oh no, when you're on a Zoom call, and then I referred to you as you
Uh-huh.
because
Yep.
I just panicked.
Uh-huh. You did. But
Oh.
it was still great.
Oh,
Yeah,
there you
it's
go.
a good thing that the founders knew you, and it was more like, hey, how can we
Yeah.
convince this guy, Antony, to come out?
Oh God, that's
Anyway,
hilarious.
yeah.
But yes, I am Natalie, not Nat, and I oversee our people operations team here at Hermeus. I started as a technical recruiter. That's really what the majority of my background is recruiting for internal and external companies, mostly software focused. So I had a little bit of that base engineering knowledge, but coming here was certainly a big change and somewhat muscled my way into a people operations role. And I don't think the founders knew much about what that meant. I'm still trying to figure that out. And so right now that means recruitment, onboarding, offboarding, employee programs, HR. Thank goodness we have a HR person now. So yeah, that's my role. So for everyone listening, the reason that this group got together today is to talk about things we all very much are passionate about. Leading teams, building teams, diversity and inclusion, all of that good stuff. So, I want to kind of kick it off, and thanks for, sharing where you all came from. But on top of that, I want to hear from you all specifically on why you joined Hermeus, and kind of what impact you thought you could have to joining and, such a small team, when you did. So Danielle, want to go first?
Yeah. So Natalie recruited me to Hermeus, so she's the reason I'm here. But yeah, one of the big, I joined when we had about 11 people. I was happy at Astra. It was a great team that I was working with, but the opportunity, like the technical opportunity to learn is huge. It's like airplanes are my first love. I like airplanes more than rockets. I am not ashamed to say, but the technical project, like technical problems we're solving are huge. Really exciting opportunity and like almost scary opportunity to learn so many new things. But a big part of it too is like getting to impact the company and how the company grows. So being at companies that are already 100 plus people. So Astra was about 100, 150 when I joined the team, and Blue was over 500 at the point that I joined. A lot of the culture is really already very thoroughly established, fully ingrained. Making a change there is difficult. You can impact the people that you're working with directly, but it's much harder to impact the company level. And I really wanted to try to build the best company possible. So that was an exciting opportunity that you don't get a whole lot.
Have you had that opportunity since you've been here?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's I'm an engineering leader at the company, and I've never gotten to work for a woman structures engineer before, especially in a leadership role like this. So it's awesome for me, for my professional growth, but also for like the company to see getting to bring young women in that get to see an example in leadership. That's a very technical position as well, is exciting. And then also just all of the conversations that we have daily, right? It's a thing that we talk about. We don't have necessarily formal conversations about it, but it comes up in, I would say at least once a day. I mean, I don't think that's anywhere near an exaggeration. Yeah. Maybe an
probably
underestimate. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Antony, what about you?
Yeah, I think that, Natalie, I know that you have a lot of feelings here, and we'll probably get into this more. But, I think that after college, I had a lot of this mindset of what I thought I wanted to do. And I was interning at a startup, so I knew that I wanted to be a part of a small team. I joined the team at Boom out in Denver. And I think that, and Natalie, I know you agree with this, where colleges and universities don't really set up their systems for students to be really successful leaving school and entering the workforce. So I think that when it came time to, think about joining Hermeus, I fell in love with this idea of like, I can finally like work on this project that I think is just hands down the coolest problem in aerospace, but also get to just own a lot of it too. I think that that's probably a common thread for everyone here of just like getting to just own so much of it. I know we all just care so much about everything we do. And it makes things so fun. It makes things hard sometimes when we disagree, because we all just are coming at it with like, not just like what is the logical thing to do here, but it's just like,
no, there's motion and
there's
passion
so
behind
much like fire behind all the words we say and the conversations we have, and like the many late nights we spend doing something that we all care a lot about. Building the fastest reusable aircraft that's ever existed is no joke. That is just something that is just the coolest opportunity that I've ever had in my life.
You know what's hard though to kind of like suss out during an interview process is that kind of like passion, that feeling of like, I care so much. Like someone can say those words, but then doing it within your role or kind of pushing beyond that, it's almost impossible to find that unless you have like a referral, you know, you have a reference from that person. Like it's really hard to see until they're here doing the thing.
I think it's hard if you're unclear, but there are definitely people that come through that you can tell, right?
Yeah, they've got like a little spark.
Yeah.
But it's a feeling. It's not something that you can.
It's not something that you can quantify at all.
No. And that's what's really hard because like I know you and I have had conversations of like, man, this person interviewed okay, wasn't great, but man, we saw that spark.
Yeah.
So it's like, do we give them the opportunity? And usually we lean towards yes, and then they end up being great engineers.
Yeah.
But that is a really hard thing to, like you said, nearly impossible to quantify.
Yeah.
In interviews, I'll ask, like, tell me something that you just care so much about. Like, take a couple minutes, just nerd out over something. And my favorite answer is always when it's not something to do with engineering. Like, I love it when people...
What is your favorite answer that you've gotten?
The best answer that I've gotten was definitely like someone he just took a second. He's just like, I think just the English language is so crazy. He's like, isn't it crazy that we like just like use the words that we use and we all have like agreed that these sounds have these meanings? And like he just went off for like 3 minutes and I just absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
Because it just curiosity in the world and just like obsession with these like little nuggets of just the world is so cool and I'm gonna obsess over this thing now. It's infectious and it carries over to just everything that we do day to day here.
Yeah.
Like no one is like the most passionate in the world about harnesses. But like, you know,
I don't know. Remember that one person we interviewed who was like, all I want to do is make harnesses.
That's weird. That's strange. But like, if you're passionate about things in the world, like I want that to carry into like everything you do and just that to infect the rest of the team.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Wes, what about you? You were one of like the first to join the team. So you obviously had a unique opportunity here at Hermeus compared to the rest of the, you know, folks that are here.
Yeah, so I was the third employee, but when I interviewed, there was only one other person.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was super tiny. And similar to Danielle, I got into aerospace because I love airplanes. Like I used to go for like my 12th or 13th birthday or something. I took like a 3-day weekend at the Dayton Air Force Museum with my dad and just like spent days looking at airplanes, which is extremely nerdy.
Also, like Wes, you're just like so fashionable and cool that I forget that at your core you are such a nerd.
I love that though, because it's just like I don't think anyone goes to college and then they're just like, oh yeah, I guess I'll work on rockets or airplanes. Like that usually happens way earlier. Either like one of my favorite questions when I screen people is, you know, why aviation, why aerospace? And a lot of times they're like, oh well, my dad was a pilot, or I used to build planes with my parents, or just they have some story of, you know, their childhood, and usually pretty early on, like 5 or 6 years old, that established, oh, I'm interested in this. Not necessarily that they were going to have a career in that, but it was an area of interest for them. So I think that's really cool.
I think there's just something that grabs you, you know, like you see them flying overhead and it's just like a daily reminder of something that's so cool. And like that, or if you go to like a air show or something and you can like feel the power of the engines, you know, there's something like very cool and raw about it for some people. And so I really wanted to get back into aviation. Like I started my career out a couple years as a configurator at Boeing, but I really wanted, you know, a faster paced environment, more responsibility. So I moved to SpaceX and I loved it there. I learned a ton, got to see a lot of stuff I worked on fly. But by the time I was there, it was already a large company. I think I was like employee number 4,500 or something. And so while I was getting a chance to kind of like take on the responsibilities that you might see in a startup, I was able to influence the vehicle. I wasn't able to really influence the culture or like really have a hand as much in like the top level design. And so when I saw the job, which was originally just a senior aerodynamics engineer, I saw that opportunity to come in and like take that, but also run into more of the larger vehicle design, like owning the OML, owning the configuration, and really like having an airplane that could like kind of be my baby, you know, a little bit. And so I really wanted that. And then I'd also, just spending time at SpaceX, talk to people who had been there, earlier time frame, and like hearing the stories of like what they went through. Like I just wanted to be a part of that, like be a part of, like the hard stuff of building a company, and kind of go through that. And so it's not just like an airplane that's my baby, but like the company can be your baby a little bit too. And I think like you were saying that we really care about the vehicle earlier, but I think maybe we have more intense conversations about like the company and the culture and like what we should do. Like people get
philosophical things. They're just like,
people
are so fiery about it.
Yeah, we maybe care a little too much sometimes, but and I've definitely had the ability to do that. So
I have a quick aside off of something that Wes said, and I'm curious, Antony, your answer to this. Were you always an aerospace aviation nerd from a young age?
Yeah, I was like a huge like space nerd. Like the Apollo missions were just like this like thing of fascination for me. Like Apollo 13, like I remember watching the movie for the first time and like being emotional because it's like they're so raw and guttural like engineering of just like, these like we have this problem in space and like they just make this thing happen. I like stumbled upon this like old little like what am I gonna be when I grow up thing from like middle school, and it was like an electrical engineer working at NASA, and I'm like, well, maybe not NASA, but like I got pretty close.
So I didn't fully have that experience, and I want to like shout out that it's okay, because I think women especially don't get the you can play with hardware part of your experience as a child. So I got my sister's hand-me-down Barbies and not my brother's hand-me-down Legos, which is fine. Like the Legos were probably somewhere, and I might have gravitated to the Barbies, but like I got into engineering and aviation because I did like airplanes, but like I liked getting, my favorite part of the family trips was getting to go on an airplane, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't 12 going to air and space museums. That doesn't mean I don't love airplanes now, but I that wasn't in my childhood, right?
Yeah.
And I went and took flight lessons and didn't when I got my pilot's license when I was in high school.
I did not know that.
Really? Okay. Well, yeah, I mean I haven't flown in forever because everyone gets a pilot's license and then stops flying because it's very expensive. But I didn't know all of the parts of the airplane, which is like a thing that I think most people that are paying to take a flight lesson have learned, right? And so it's just little I liked math and science. I knew I liked airplanes. I got to do that in high school. It got me onto the aerospace path. But I wasn't a 10-year-old that knew I wanted to be a pilot. I liked it and I thought about it, but I definitely was not reading SR-71 books or any of that, looking at airplane pictures all the time as a kid. And I think that's also totally fine. I think it's definitely not, I don't think that anyone was saying that it wasn't fine, but it also is not something that's talked about quite as much.
Yeah.
Everyone's always I've loved airplanes since I was little. And I think that's true, but I didn't love them in the traditional way that everybody
I think that's why I get so excited about working with some of the local STEM organizations, or I guess STEAM now, because they are so focused on middle school, high school, and there's some groups that are even younger that are, specifically trying to get women exposed to different engineering, or little girls exposed to different engineering careers, not necessarily specific to aerospace or aviation, but just to be here's what you could do.
Yeah.
I didn't have those conversations. It was just go to school, go play sports, whatever. It just wasn't talked about. Not that my parents probably weren't thinking about it, but it just there wasn't a focus there.
Yeah, and I definitely had the engineering exposure, but it just wasn't purely airplanes. And that's, I think I started in high school saying I wanted to be an astronaut, and I don't really want to be that anymore. But the later decisions in that later, high school is you're still very young.
Yeah.
But
if you could right now wave a magic wand to go to space, would you say yes or no?
Ooh.
Wes and Natalie, I want you guys to answer too.
I used to ask this question on first dates.
Something's always this tracks.
This was your
not the best filter.
I was gonna say, if this was your filter, I don't know. There's no way that would have been successful.
I would.
Uh-huh.
I would have questions about what vehicle I was going up on. But yes, I would. Yeah.
Oh.
I would. I mean, I'm not throwing shade at anybody. I just I'm an engineer and I know what can go wrong, and I want to know what it is working and what requirements and safety checks they've done, because I do value my life.
Yes.
On Earth.
That's fair.
So Wes, you definitely would go.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, no questions.
It would be weird going up on Crew Dragon, just because I spend so much time working on it that I know so much about it, and I know it's totally safe. And I would definitely do it, but that would be like an extra sensation, like knowing so much about that,
knowing
vehicle.
what's happening when this
Yeah.
is doing this, that's
When
doing
you're
that.
when you're on the most stressing condition on the. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the most likely time that things are going to go wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, like knowing how things can fail is kind of terrifying. Like I remember learning more about how planes worked and like getting on a plane and just being like, oh my God, this is terrifying. Like we're just okay with this. Like everyone knows what's going on right now. Like we are in a metal tube in the sky, just hurtling.
So like the metal is 40 thousandths of an inch thick here, and you're expecting me to go up in the atmosphere in this thing? Yeah.
Oh yeah, insane. But yeah, I bet that's what that experience would be like. You're aware of all the things that could go wrong or might go wrong. You trust the system, but it's still terrifying.
You're hearing all the like valve clicks and everything.
Yeah. I'm so glad that we don't have like a pilot on Quarter Horse, like that.
Oh, I sleep much better at night because of that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Natalie, what about you? Would you go to space right now if you could wave a magic wand?
Yeah, if I could also have a 100% guarantee that I got to kiss the ground again.
What
Listen.
percentage guarantee would you not want to do it at?
99.
Oh, okay.
What about
It's-
what about 99.9?
Okay,
Oh,
listen.
early needling here.
Listen. So like if I spend too much time on a boat, I'm like I get back to land, kiss the ground. We have a celebration. I like solid underneath my feet.
We haven't told you about the bathroom situation in these yet, so that might also influence your decision.
I feel like that would influence my
Oh,
decision.
absolutely not. Oh yeah, no. So the last launch that I watched, I was like, well, I think it was with you. And I was like asking you all those questions. I was like, well, what happens when they go to the bathroom? And you were like, well, this happens. I was like, oh, absolutely not. Yeah. Not for me. So maybe, I don't know.
I'm assuming you're a 100% yes.
Oh, I romanticize the idea of being the type of person who says yes, but like physiologically, I feel like I'd be miserable.
Yeah.
Absolutely miserable.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm not astronaut material.
You're too tall and I'm
You
too
got a
short.
You got a couple.
Yeah, I'm not
You
sure if
kinda
any of us
just,
are,
yeah.
but yeah, you, Antony, and I are like comfy people. We have to have our surroundings be
Nice.
comfy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to have.
The amenities have to be just pristine.
They have to be pristine.
Mhm.
Otherwise,
We're gonna leave the worst Yelp review for the trip to space. Could you imagine? Just like 2 out of 5. Too bumpy. Jesus, who taught you how to fly this thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
That's us.
Oh man, I am really curious, Wes, if you're willing to share what your best response was to that date question. Just staring,
Yeah.
just like, who is this guy?
Most people, probably the worst response was like, why would you ask that question? Or like why would I care about this question?
And that was all of them. But
Yeah.
because like I imagine when you ask this question in your head, there's like this person who's just like, oh my gosh.
Okay, so it was a little more detailed
Yes.
than that. It was like, would you go to space or would you want to do this other thing, which was like spend time in Europe. And so then it was like trying to figure out like where the balance was, like why people valued like one thing over the other. It wasn't just like
you go to
this
space?
filter. It was like trying to understand why people would make a decision that they made. But it fell out of the rotation
Yes.
for
Obvious
good
reasons.
reasons.
Yes. That's hilarious. All
Important to note, current girlfriend did not get that question.
Yes.
So,
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Made a good choice
She
then.
probably would have filtered you out if you had you asked.
yeah.
That's hilarious. Shout out to Emily. But all right, so I want to get back into some of the things we were talking about a little bit earlier, and just like opportunities to lead the direction of the company and kind of impact on culture there. So I guess I'm curious what you all feel like has been your greatest impact thus far, or what kind of riles you up the most about like a specific cultural topic.
Oh, I think that for me, it just coming into this whole thing, I'm on the younger side. I graduated college in 2018. So a little over 3.5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, part of it is just the opportunity to really just dive into a lot of things, do things that are just like way out of my comfort level. But then also, kind of like as we build this team, really enabling people to do the same thing, like get out of their comfort zone, just like double down on things. It's like, hey, like I'm not the expert at this thing, but I'm going to try, I'm going to learn, I'm going to fail, I'm going to get better, and like rinse and repeat. I think that to Wes's point earlier, where we're not just building a plane, we're not even building a couple planes, we're building this company that just goes beyond so much of that. I've had a lot of great mentors in the past, and a lot of great people who write really solid books on startups, but there's nothing quite like being in the thick of it with some really important people in your life, and just like realizing like, hey, like we're all just kind of doing this thing together, and like we all don't really know how to steer the ship, but we're all trying our best.
You are really good at like keeping the kind of like the hype, I guess, up, like the energy high, especially when it's like a late night at the test site or there's a couple days in a row where it's longer hours than usual. Like where is that your youth coming out that the other like that we don't have, or like what is that? Where does that come from?
Oh, I mean like it just comes down to like, everything we're doing together, we're all in it together. Also just like I am so optimistic all the time.
Yeah.
Which can be a good thing, but also like staying realistic is important as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that if I subscribe very strongly to, if you think it can happen and if you think it will happen, it might happen. But if you don't like really believe that it'll happen, like if you think that it probably won't happen, it certainly won't happen. And I think that like that's just something that bleeds into the subconscious of like how I am day to day and just in my life.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, well, it's not going to happen unless I'm so aggressively positive that like this can happen and we can do it. Yes. But then of course, like balancing that with like the realism of the situation and making sure that like we're validating people's concerns. Like, of course there's the second order things. Like it's not just the logical extreme of that.
Right.
But I think that's just my default state is like very, very energetic about these exciting problems we have here.
Very energetic. Danielle.
Very different answer here, but and not so much that I've had to do it here, but something that I'm really passionate about and that I like. I think people have probably heard me get very irked when people say this is increasing diversity, and the like fallacy of whenever you say that, people respond with, well, we don't want to lower the bar, which is inherent. Like I haven't really experienced that from people here, but also it's like a thing that I call out immediately. It's like so ingrained because it drives me so completely insane. Yeah. Because nobody has said anything about increasing diversity and lowering the bar. Like we don't have diversity hires. We aren't hiring people as tokens. We're bringing in like we're trying to bring a solid team together that has a diverse background so that we can have the best team possible. Yeah. It is a conversation I have had to have a lot in my career when we're in the interview process and working with different recruiters to try to get a more diverse team, especially as a hiring manager, asking to get more diverse candidates, people from underrepresented groups into your team, or at least into the candidate pool. Like that can be really frustrating because the fallacy is that you have to lower the bar. Like you don't have to lower the bar to hire people that are different than you. Yeah. And it comes up in conversation so much that it's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah. No, you've done a really good job of kind of steering conversations around the thought process behind diversity, inclusion, belonging, all of that. So I think that that's been really impactful. But something that I mentioned to you, I think even earlier today, that I find extremely unusual is you have been one of the very few, I didn't really interview you two, so I don't know if you all asked, but you were one of the very few people that asked during your interview process, like, how does the company think about diversity and inclusion? Yeah. And that's just so kind of bizarre to me. It comes up very, very rarely. I know that as a company, like once we get to a final interview stage, we bring it up to understand how folks that we're interviewing think about it, how they can impact that here. But the fact that no one really brings it to us on a regular basis is a little unusual.
Yeah, and I think a big reason why I did is one, you were recruiting me. I felt like empowered to ask those questions because I wouldn't have come here if it was something that none of the founders had thought about. Because I wanted to come to a place where I knew that making changes that would improve DE&I at the company and at the culture level of the company was going to be supported at minimum, certainly not blocked, and was going to be like something that they would push and advocate for as well. And so something that like as you get further in your career, you get to do is interview. Like you get to interviews are always a two-way road, but they feel much more as you're experienced and can be picky about where you work. It's like it's a thing I won't compromise on.
I'm also convinced that people often think that you either are optimizing for the engineering or you're optimizing for diversity, but I'm 100% convinced that the way to actually build a good plane is to have a diverse team that's having hard conversations. Like I think it could be tempting to hire like the same person 50 times and you'll probably get like a pretty decent plane, right? But we're not just like
but
doing
what
this
type of company
thing.
are you building?
Right. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like what comes after that. Like, are you thinking about the second order things, the third order things? Are you having hard conversations about other things that, bleed into like the engineering discussions?
Are people enjoying what they're doing? Do they like coming to work every day?
Yeah, Natalie, you kind of made a reference to it earlier, but the times when we've kind of looked beyond the standard resume too, and backgrounds where
we Natalie's great about
have to make like maybe like challenge our assumptions about the person. Like a lot of times those people have come in and just been great.
Oh, something that Danielle brought up early on, this is something I learned from her, was like, it's like, how do you define a culture fit? And like challenging like what that means. Like, like it's just like, hey, are you hanging out with someone outside of work? And then you're subconsciously selecting for someone who has the same background as you because you're talking about the same things after work.
Or someone that can be friends with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think like culture fit here means one thing, but I think it very much, that phrase gets misused at a lot of companies because they're doing just that. They are sourcing, interviewing, hiring based on someone's likeness to them when that's not the actual definition of a culture. It might be for them, but like it's not the same.
We have an actual definition for what we see as like what culture fit means at Hermeus, and we rank it based on the like values of the company that we all follow and review ourselves and performing at whenever we do performance reviews, right? Everywhere else that I've been like privy to the interview process, it's will they get along with the people on the team is what culture fit means. And in that case, you're interviewing for people that are going to be your friend, right? That aren't going to challenge, that are going to go grab a beer with you after work, which is all well and good and something we've done together multiple times, right? But like isn't what makes a good employee or a good engineering contributor to a team.
Right.
And on the flip side, there's also just like, as we are doing something, we're hiring an awesome engineering team. And, you look at historically what that demographic is. We're doing something that is challenging. We're trying to build the best airplane company ever, which is challenging. So, as we go down this path, I think it's also really important to make sure that we're calling out ourselves when we're messing up, which I think that we do a really good job on. But also going back to something you mentioned earlier, Danielle, is just like, we'll never have any token hires. We won't have quotas because I will refuse to ever have someone think like, oh, was I hired for X?
Oh.
No.
I will certainly, I could see us having a quota for people in the pipeline, right? Good quality candidates in the pipeline. But we're never gonna.
Yeah, like a company.
We're not gonna have
number.
But also we should look at the data of what we have, right?
Oh, it should definitely inform getting better.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like the four of us, and even obviously the founders and some other leads as well. We have some spicy takes on recruitment, focusing on how to focus on diversity, inclusion, onboarding. We have all of those. So I'm curious to know, like, what is the one aspect or what, like, the one category of those that your mind has been changed about since, being here at Hermeus? If anything, if you're just like, that's the dumbest idea, and then get talked into be like, actually not terrible.
So I know that Vinod Khosla, who's first investor here at Hermeus, has this whole shtick on gene pool engineering, which is kind of like a fancy way of saying like hire a diverse team. And it's kind of like on like what I mentioned earlier, where it's like you're not hiring diversity for the sake of diversity, and you're also not like optimizing for this perfect engineering product. But like as you build a team of like different people, you have all of these like nuanced conversations that are so second order that actually make a better engineering product when you have people coming from different backgrounds. So I think like along a similar vein, I think that something that is very different about Hermeus is just like how much of an emphasis we put on like what we're really trying to build from a culture standpoint, like what that really means, how we want that to grow, how we want that to evolve. And also like the 5-person company version of culture is very different than the 50-person version of
it's very
culture
different.
versus the 500-person version of culture. And I think that like thinking about how, as we think about diversity and inclusion, but even like the culture, the people we're trying to bring onto the team, I think that is something that I'd never really thought about quite as in depth, is like, as we are growing, as we're telling this story, as we're really writing this story, like how are we thinking about this like very difficult nuanced things, calling ourselves out when we mess up and then getting better. It's all part of the plan.
I think honestly, I was worried when I heard when I like first joined the team and started being in the interview process, how we talked that we talked about culture fit as much as we did. So like that was like
because you were used to the connotation of the likeness. Okay,
it was used in a way to like eliminate, and never consciously, right? It's all like subconscious bias, but it's always like I just don't have a good feeling about this person, and it's because you can't really relate to them because you don't know them, because there's no one on your team that is like them that can interview them, because you don't have a diverse team, right? And so like that was something that worried me, and then I started talking to you about it and got better context around it, and it's something we have to be,
and what we actually meant by saying that,
right? It had a meaning and a definition and an actual like a more quantifiable ranking than. Because there's like sub tiers of what we define. We have multiple things that we're looking for when we say culture fit, right?
Yeah. And I think too, like when we give that feedback to each other, like I don't think this person is a culture fit. Like there's not a period after that. We're usually pretty good at being like, because of XYZ, because of these very specific reasons. Yeah,
I think mine is pretty similar, because I was always thinking that culture fit is like, would I want to go get a beer with this person, And I was kind of thinking a little more along the lines of, okay, we need to focus just on the technical. And if the person is, that technical fit, then that is the thing that we should care about more than the culture. And not that we ever, downplay the technical, but I think like the way that we've defined culture, it like really blends in to that technical aspect, and using that as like a key parameter for when we're looking for people.
I think maybe a different phrase or a different word, different definition of it to give some context to the people listening is like, it's really soft skills, right? It's the like engineering, taking your technical capabilities and translating them into a work, like a team environment where like I can effectively communicate the engineering problem I'm having with Wes. Because I have the soft skills around it. I know how to like, and then I also am able to like manage my own schedule or my team schedule or our integrated schedule, because those things need to be done and are important. It's the less technical but still tangible skill sets that we're looking for in people.
Like knowing how to prioritize things, descope things, because we're never going to have enough time to do everything that we want to do.
How do you make the company move faster? How do you make a project move faster? Like those sorts of things are like that's what we actually mean when we say culture fit. And that isn't what most companies that I've been involved with
This also
See,
especially comes up with new grads and interns where, it's easy to select for a lot of the technical things where it's just like, hey, you are, let's say a junior in college or something like that, and you've been coding since 6th grade and you were at, like a huge rocket nerd since you were 10 or whatever, right? Versus someone who comes in as an electrical engineer and heard about Hermeus and then decides to teach herself about planes in a week and obviously doesn't know as much about planes as someone who's been going to air shows since they were 13. But the fact that she's showing enough like determination to just like learn as much as she can to prepare for this interview, like in a week, like it's stuff like that where like, of course the technical answer won't be as like robust as someone who's been learning about planes for 10 years.
Yeah.
But it's like these like trainability, these soft skills, like that I think that Natalie, you really drive is just like, is like, hey, like, how do you see them kind of growing given that they're in this like uncomfortable situation and just just take the handcuffs off and just like explode into your role? I think that that's like something that you've really driven that I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's important to give people the opportunity, one, because I got it here. And I know other folks here have too, but give the opportunity to do what we want with our career without someone, telling us that we can't, or a company not being flexible to allow us to move into those, that type of scope of role or whatever it is. Give us the flexibility to learn on the job. A lot of people want you to come in with, 15 years of experience, but pay you a 3-year salary. And, that's something that I want to make sure that we can continue to do. But the flip side of that I find so frustrating when we have interviewed people is we find incredibly technically competent, thank you, individuals. Like they're so good. We know they could start tomorrow. We could hand them all of this work and they would be incredible, highly impactful to the team in a technical sense. But we can't hire them because, even a few, if not all of the cultural pieces are missing. And it's so frustrating because, we know how hard hiring has been. And so it's like when that happens, it's just like, but I also equally feel really good about that decision because I know I have a team and a company, like I don't have to convince you guys not to hire somebody or to hire somebody.
We all know how important it is.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Like that's incredible. Like I don't know a lot of companies that have that type of feeling really across the board, across all levels of management. Like we're usually almost always on the same page.
I almost feel like that's an easier decision to make than in the reverse.
Oh, it's harder on the reverse because it's like they're a great culture fit, but technically they're not there. Can we train them up?
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
It's easier to decide no on the. You're saying it's easier in that it's like easier to make the decision.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Because that's the hard part is like you find an amazing individual who like can come in and kind of crush it if given the right opportunity. Yeah. Sometimes we have the flexibility to do that and sometimes we don't.
Yeah.
Really and there aren't
what we're hiring for. Yeah.
Yeah.
There aren't hypersonics engineers out there either, right? Like there's a few here and there, but there haven't been any, hypersonic vehicles, reusable vehicles at all. And very few hypersonic test campaigns that have flown at all. And so we kind of can't afford to be picky in that way. Like I sometimes think about Quarter Horse. It's our first vehicle. That's the prototype that's flying. Like part of the goal isn't just to like prove out the capability of flying to Mach 5 and being reusable, but like it's really like training up hypersonics engineers too that are able to like learn and understand the problem that we can then
go build our next vehicle.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the next one after that.
Absolutely.
And there's not really that in hypersonics or, even the kind of like new space has that now, but not as much aviation. And so we really need to try to build that. And so if we were restricting ourselves to this like small bubble of people with like the perfect background,
no, we'd have no one.
It doesn't exist.
Zero people.
Yeah. I actually tell people that during the interview process. When they come for finals, they're like, what can I, expect? And we go through a little bit of the technical things, like make sure to talk about X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. But then I always say, you've got to be prepared to talk about your creative problem solving skills. I said, we can't go hire anybody that has built a Mach 5 plane before. Otherwise, we'd be doing that. And so since we don't have that luxury, we've got to, hire folks with those creative problem solving skills, those first principles thinking skills, incredible communication. Like, it's tough.
I think it's also one of those things where like this has definitely been something that I've picked up and like I bring to my like personal life, just like how I solve problems. Like I love talking to like new grads or interns who are just like, yeah, like all I had to do was just like de-scope in first principles, like how I think about my dishwasher being broken. Like that's just my favorite thing in the world, because it's like this thing that we've all just like collectively made up and agreed to, like are actually like making people's personal lives better. I'm curious.
I mean,
if, like,
they
you guys
are
have,
like life
stories
principles, they are easily transferable into non-engineering situations. I mean, when I got mad at you because I was hangry that one day because you were trying to get us to change restaurants after we were already sitting down at a restaurant.
That's fair.
And I snapped while I was being hangry and said, you're making really poor decisions right now. or I said, your decision making skills are extremely poor.
Oh, you should put that in the 360 review. Just like,
oh my God, I just full on snapped at him and use one of our cultural points.
Oh yeah, we should also
to
just
really dig deep.
We should really just like double down on like, hey, come work at Hermeus. Like the plain thing is one thing, but like be a better human.
Yeah,
like be a better person. Come work at Hermeus.
There you go. Might be our new
That's a good
tagline.
idea.
Yeah, that actually is a good idea.
Yeah.
Because it's like we are making better engineers, but like I think what I appreciate so much about like all of you, but also the rest of our team, we can't have like really one-off, weird, hard, uncomfy, whatever situations. Like we had a conversation the other day just about general dress in the office, and we have conversations about hiring. We have conversations about activities outside of work and what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate. Like we have a ton of conversations really across all topics, and it's just kind of fun.
Oh, I love being able to bring up the stuff that is hard and weird, like just because we know that like the people here, like we need to play out all of those things. Because like if you just ignore it, then like you can't just rely on status quo just taking you where you need to go. Right? You actually have to be very intentional about the things that like we are talking about that kind of guide the ship.
Yeah.
And we've always been a very open company. Like when I first started, it was impossible not to be, because we were in an office that was
10 by 10
probably
room.
this space. And so you could hear literally everything that
I
everyone
loved
was
it
doing.
because I was learning, so I'd be like, hey, Wes. Hey, AJ.
Yeah.
Hey, Lisa.
Who was it that like during their interview, this might have been yours, where like you were interviewing in
the
room
room
and
with
just
everybody?
the entire
Oh, yeah.
company's listening to your
that,
interview?
that was me.
It
So
was like Lisa was sitting probably the distance from me to Natalie
during my interview.
Like
yeah,
10
and
feet
then Wes
away?
is over there just like clicking on his computer, and they're asking me all these hard questions. I'm sweating and answering while these other people just have their backs to me working. And
Oh, it
I
would
was
have been
like-
worse if they were just like giving you the side eye. They're just like, ugh, that's not how I'd answer it.
I mean, they had to be listening. Like you can't
definitely.
not.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
and
couldn't
like
help.
yeah, that was a trip. I cut you off though. What were you saying?
So we were in a small room.
Something about you had to
Oh,
be.
right. Yeah. I mean, you couldn't help but hear what everyone was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, that's also part of why I joined. So you could hear kind of that like whole fundraising and other
Yeah.
parts. But I think we've kind of kept that openness going forward. And, recently we grew like a third larger 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So we'll
15 people started one day.
Yeah.
This is aggressive.
we'll see how that keeps going, but that's another thing that like I really appreciate is just like the openness and transparency and willing to talk, not just like us as the leads, but I think among the whole company about a lot of those things.
I have an internal struggle with time there because it's just like I need to sit at my desk, I need to do the work, blah, 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 blah. Like you were saying, the day's just over and you didn't do anything. But I guarantee you did a lot today, even if it was just through like conversations and the impact that we're having. So it's just like, even though I'm going to sit in a room and have a conversation with, 2 or 3 other people, it's going to be 30 minutes or shoot, even an hour. What comes out of that, even if it isn't like direct work, it's still, really impactful to the company.
Yeah, and it definitely like every day is getting a lot of things done. It's just not all of the things that you need to get done, which is the struggle.
Yeah. So I have kind of driven a few, I'll say, processes a little differently here at Hermeus with 100% the support of you all. But I want to get your all's thoughts like your initial thoughts when I first was like, hey, let's get rid of job descriptions?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
I loved it.
This is great.
You asked
No
me
one
for
thought
a
I was
bunch of
insane?
No, you asked me for a bunch of job descriptions, and then I said, I don't know. We need all of the structures engineers. I have to write a different one for each one, and then I was like, and then you're like, wait, let's get rid of them, and I was like,
Oh,
cool. I didn't do those, so now I definitely don't have to do them.
Yes.
I also love how that was just something like when we were coming up with the plan,
Mhm.
like it was just you at the whiteboard at the second office we were in,
Yeah.
and it was just like you, like we were just like in that like little Avionics little corner with the
Yeah.
whiteboard, and like it was just like everyone just like doing this thing, and we're just like you know, we're just like drawing and crossing things out, and just like, and then you hit this button, and then it like brings you to like a team description,
Mhm.
and like I remember I think it was like the founders all walk in, and they were just like
They did.
so
They were
confused.
dropping off the grill. 'Cause it
Yeah.
was like 6 p.m. at night. They were dropping off a grill, and they were like,
Yeah, you're right.
why
you're
are
right.
people here? What are you all doing? And I was like, listen to this crazy.
We just have the
idea."
red string everywhere, and we're just like, well, we fixed all the problems.
And I was like so shocked because I 100% thought that they were gonna fight back and be like, no, that's a bad idea. And so I went in hard, like I do too often. And I was like, here's what we're gonna do. This is why it's great. You need to listen. I promise. And they were like, yeah, that sounds great. I was like, oh, that was
like,
easy.
wait, no, I had more in me.
Yeah, I was like, okay, that was not as hard as I thought it was gonna be.
I was ready for a fight.
Yeah, it was. It was.
I definitely do. I'm curious what your guys' experience has been having like 4 engineer founders opposed to like a lot of other like, you know, high level management. Like I think it's been very, very different with like the relationship between like the C-suite, quote unquote, and like the low level engineers. Like it's like a very flat organization that I've experienced. And I think like kind of communicating up and down is like something where there's like a high level of trust of just like, hey, you know what? Like we trust you to have some context, and we're going to like listen to you. We're going to learn more about both opinions here, and we're just going to move forward, which I think like even something where on the job descriptions, it's like awesome that it's just like, all right, like we trust you.
Yeah.
Let's try it.
Yeah.
I'm curious what your guys' opinions or experiences have been, good
Well,
or bad.
I think because they were engineers, they probably trust us in different ways than someone who has a different background might. But one of the things I was really concerned about from some past history at other companies was how like the executive team would react to like the engineering decisions of the engineering team because they were engineers themselves, and so like they might have their own kind of ideas that they were kind of wedded to. Thankfully, it hasn't really been a problem. You know, been very willing to accept the expertise of the team that's in place. So I think that's been great, and I'm sure it's hard to do as someone that has like an engineering background, just kind of like leave and let go and like
Oh, I'm sure
let
that
this other
all
stuff
of us
happen.
have experienced that, like as we grow our
Oh,
teams,
Mhm.
right? Yeah.
Oh, it's hard. Yeah. As a non-engineer, I will say it's very difficult to have a founding team of all engineers. Mostly from not from a trust perspective at all, but mostly from a communication issue. It's no longer a problem, but in the beginning it was so hard. I was in a room, you know, with our 4 founders and Wes and Lisa, and I still communicate very differently than everybody else. Like I'm a very feelings, vibes person. You know, I'm not analytical whatsoever. I'm not a 0 and 1s person. Even though I now say non-zero, I've picked that up here.
The Hermeus lingo is, we
I've
could write
picked
a
it up.
dictionary.
I was thinking of the day at the office where I was like, just casually, oh, and no one believes in ghosts, right?
And I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, of course I believe in ghosts. And Wes looked at me like I was joking. He was like, huh? And I was like, yeah. I was like, this and that. And he was just like, oh, like, no, they're not real. And I was like, okay. So it's just like, you know, being the first, I'll say more like creative mind instead of like hard engineering, analytical type of person. It was really tough. But something that I really appreciated was that I could give that feedback. And adjustments were made on my end as well as on their end, especially with you all too. Like anytime that we don't communicate well or talk past each other, we're just like, okay, hold on, freeze, redo. We've got to fix this because, like, you know, that has been one of my most frustrating things working with majority of engineers. And it's not engineers specifically, but it's more of like people who generally think the same, like process thoughts similarly. It's been tough.
I was going to say that like the nice thing for a person with an engineering background when talking to another engineer is that we were taught the same, not necessarily the same way to think about a problem, but the common things that you consider when you're looking at a problem. And so we have the same like language and look at the same things so we can make a rational argument to whatever other engineer we're talking to.
Right.
So that's been a good thing, but I would see like I had never thought about the fact that would have been the thing that was a great thing for me would not be a great thing for you because you're not an engineer.
No, it was so bad. AJ's going to find this out from this podcast, but there was one day he's probably going to feel bad. There was one day, I don't even remember what happened, but I remember after work going to my car and I was so upset I couldn't even drive. I just like sat there and had like little tears come down my face, not because he was mean, not because he said anything, it was just, I felt like I was talking to a wall and because like my words were not sinking in whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so after that, that's when I like finally said something and then it's been way better. But it was just like, oh my God. But I guarantee that was his feeling too. Because we couldn't.
Oh, you two are the most different people.
The most different, but it's actually like been great because working with him specifically and you all too, but because I report directly to him and we obviously talk all day, every day, it's really forced me to not change the way I communicate, but be more flexible when I'm talking to different types of people. Because that was the first, that was the most aggressive instance of me not being able to communicate with someone well on a regular basis. And so, yeah, it definitely made me more flexible coming into other conversations. Because, like, I'm an extremist. I love something. I hate it. I'm having a great day or it's like it's going to hell, And so it's like, for you all, and I think you all are similar in this way. You all hold on to very specific words. It's like, Natalie said this. I'm like, well, I didn't mean that. It's like in my head, it's just like me saying a feeling, me describing a feeling when you all might think it's, something more intense. But yeah.
One thing that came to mind that I think we still need to get a lot better at, but I hope we've done a pretty good job through time is like making you as the first, you were a technical recruiter. So you were still a technical hire, but the first non-engineer. And like you did take on a lot of that other stuff.
I was not a technical hire. We don't have to play that nice. we don't have to say that. No, but like that's a great point. Like you don't see a lot of companies bring in non-technical folks, especially non-technical folks that are geared towards building a team as early as our founders did. I was the fourth hire outside of the founder, so the eighth person on the team, and I very quickly got into doing some like very light HR, but very heavily recruitment. And it wasn't just finding people, like we were having those conversations then. We were having these same conversations then. So yeah, that's exactly right. Like that was really interesting.
Also love that, like, I feel like you kind of have trained this, like the first instance of a not engineer to make it better for the future non-engineers. Like I love the story of you working at the test site or like coming to the test site for the first time. I want you to tell the story because I love it.
The lived experience was less great. So my first day, I show up to work. I knew it was a casual environment, so I wore jeans, but I still had on my little boots, my little high heel boots because I'm a professional, and I had always worked in companies where I like had to wear suits or at least dress really nice. Like jeans weren't allowed. So me wearing jeans was already very casual for me. So I show up in my high heels, and part of the culture tradition that I squashed it.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. We would build a door desk, some that we still have, for the next employee. And then on that start date, so Wes built my desk. So when I started, first day, I had to wax it. So this is after lunch. I'm like waxing my desk. They're like, here's the stuff. I'm like, okay. So I'm sweating in my cute blouse and my high heels. And it's like 30, 45 minutes in. And I asked Mike, I said, how long should this take? He was like, About 10, 15 minutes. I'm like, well, I've been doing it for a little longer than that. Will you come look at it? He was like, that looks really bad. You need to keep going. So I was like, okay. So I keep going. And then somebody walks by and they were like, oh, did you not, I don't even know what the word was. Did you not
Wax off.
the version of wax off? And I said, no. And they were like, it's the same as waxing a car, wax on, wax off. And I literally looked this person in the eye and I said, do I look like I have waxed a car? Because the answer is no. And then immediately after that, they were like, okay, well, we're going to go out to the test site, show you around, have you help out there. I was like, wonderful. So we get out there. At that point, it was 2 20-foot containers in a grass field. The ground was not very hard that day.
One of them was this one.
Yeah, one of them was the one behind us. And I was sinking-ish into the ground, so that was fun. And then they were like, okay, organize all of these tools and some of this hardware. So I was like, great. I am a lot of things. One of them is not a tooling person. So they said,
What? This is shocking.
it's shocking. They go, organize all these things. So I said, what are these? They were like, just put the bolts over there. The nuts. I mean, I'm surprised I didn't say, where do I put the butts? The bolts over there. Do this. The lugs. What are those called?
There's bolts and nuts and washers.
Washers. Those things.
Yeah.
And so anyway, and I'm looking at them. I'm like, I don't know what those are. So one of the interns at the time was just like, I'll direct you. But we're going to get this organized, but I'll direct you. I was like, great, happy to help. But yeah, so my first day, I think my feet were bleeding by the end of it because I had just worn high heels standing
all day.
in the test site, in the grass, waxing a desk. So the next day I showed up in flat boots.
I will say though, I do like that we have kept the best parts of that though, which is like
being at the test site.
Yeah, it's just like regardless of your background, you learn to weld with Chris.
Oh, it's
and
amazing.
You are, learning how to drive the skid steer.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter what your background is, you're touching hardware.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Because that's an important part of our job. You don't have to learn. You don't have to know the names of everything clearly, and you don't have to be able to use all the tools. But when we were building Quarter Horse, something that, or our manufacturing demonstrator, something that I personally enjoyed, and I know Ashley did too. One of our other recruiters is getting to work with you, Danielle, and the structures team, and like pull rivets and do the clecos. I say it wrong every time.
That was right.
Yes. And like use the deburr the brackets, like. Even though those were like very simple tasks that no one else wanted to do, we had a blast. Like it was really fun to like actually get our hands on hardware and show this to my parents when they came for our friends and family event. And like, I did some stuff on that, like that's a really cool thing to do. Like I obviously care a lot about my job and the responsibilities that I have, but it's really neat to get to do things so far outside of that. On some like random basis like that. That's really fun.
That was definitely one of the things that kind of attracted me to Hermeus, because when I started, there was only 7 of us total. And so I was out there, in this
shipping container.
Shipping container, that's the word. In the shipping container. And like bending tubes and building up like fluid systems, which I never would have had an opportunity to do anywhere else. Analysis people are at pretty much every company are on their computers running models all day. And I was able to like go out there and bend tubes, and it was great.
Yeah. I hope that we always kind of keep that.
Yeah.
As part of the culture.
Everyone always likes someone else to come and bend their tubes for them. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Danielle is saying, anytime you want to bend some tubes. That's funny.
Or harnesses. Oh, so
harnesses are
tubes and harnesses are they're the same in terms of like trainability and
badness as well.
Yeah, we also had to make our.
Everyone's got to do it though.
Ethernet
Everyone has
cables.
to do it.
We were so cheap when we started that we didn't buy like.
You didn't buy connectorized
Ethernet
cables?
No, we had to connectorize our own, so you could plug in your.
It's also
desktop.
definitely the worst one to connectorize. Like I'll go on like a 30-minute soapbox on how the RJ45 is the worst connector, but I feel like no one cares.
No, probably not.
That's just maybe
someone does, but not
Podcast
someone that's
number
sitting right
3.
here.
No one here, no one listening to this podcast cares, but I care so much
Maybe
about the Ethernet cable connector,
start a
RJ45.
connector review podcast. And
Oh, that'll be a spinoff,
Yeah.
just like connector reviews
Yeah.
on YouTube.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
I actually bet there's like a very niche market that you could just lean into.
I feel like all of us also nerd out over something like very, very, very specific
Yeah, that's
Yes.
probably
that we have like the strongest opinion in the world about.
Oh, too strong. Too
Oh,
strong.
Yeah, we definitely have lots of strong opinions here.
Oh yeah.
Well, I am curious to think or to know, just to kind of wrap this up here. A little spicy question, a little fun question. If you had to choose the Hermeus mascot and choose it from an existing sports team, what would it be?
Oh man, I have to know sports teams for this.
Sports ball.
So this is actually something that I put in the Fun Talk chat recently. But so I'm from Sugar Land, Texas. It's a little suburb next to Houston, and they recently changed their mascot to the Space Cowboys. Right? They are the Sugar Land Space Cowboys. That's a real thing.
Wait, did you say baseball team?
It's a minor league baseball team.
Okay.
Yeah. And they are the Sugar Land Space Cowboys.
Uh-huh.
And I don't even know what the mascot looks like. I know nothing about the logistics of this, but purely on just creativity and just like, hey, this is a bad idea. We don't care. Let's do it. Like just on that alone.
I do love
exactly that.
I do love that.
Because we're doing something no one's ever done before.
Uh-huh.
A
Space
cowboy
Cowboys.
riding quarter horse, kind of like Dr. Strangelove style, would be.
Ooh.
An astronaut riding quarter horse, sort of Doctor Strangelove style.
Yeah, I mean, because he does need the pressurized suit
Yeah.
up at 100,000 feet.
Ooh.
Wait, that's not a bad idea. Should we pitch this?
I think we need to work with Sugar Land, Texas
Okay.
to make this happen.
I-
We'll do a
I
collab.
seriously doubt they've trademarked it though, so we can probably sneak in.
I feel like Space Cowboys also. That's a pretty
That's
generic.
Yeah, that's a
That's
generic.
generic in a mascot.
Oh man. Well, guys, this was fun. I appreciate all of you. I really do. I like all of you very much.
Yeah. Same.
Same.
Did it.
all in our feelings.
Oh, dude, it's
All
great.
right. Toodles.
Let's hang out after this.
Okay.
Yeah.